Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we are going to talk about 5 mistakes that you need to avoid as a beginner photographer. But before that, if you are new here, I am Sush Mohan and this is 35mm.app. At 35mm.app, we organize photography contests and make videos about how to improve as a photographer. So do check out our website, which is 35mm.app, and our YouTube channel, and also follow us on IGTV. Now back to our topic. I have been doing photography for a while now and I have made so many mistakes. I make mistakes even now. But these are the 5 mistakes that I think are very important that a beginner photographer should avoid. Let's look at them. Number 1, being too afraid of using manual settings. When I was a beginner photographer, I was always afraid of using manual settings. I was thinking that if I use manual settings, I might not get good photos, so I will go back to auto settings. Now, using auto settings is not a bad thing. I do it sometimes myself. But thing is, if you're a new photographer, if you're using auto settings too much, you're not understanding how different values of aperture, shutter speed and ISO affect the photos. So it's better to use manual settings when you're beginning photography so that you can understand how different value of aperture, shutter speed and ISO affect your exposure. Only after switching to manual settings, I was able to know that what is the maximum ISO I can get on my camera without getting noise. What kind of light trails I can get when I'm using different settings of shutter speed, and how depth of fields get affected by the aperture. These things I was able to know only and only after I switched back to manual settings. So it's better that you stick to manual settings as a beginner initially. Once you have understood this concept, how the exposure works, how these settings work, then you can go back to auto settings and actually see, is auto settings working for you or against you. So if it's working for you and you are in a hurry, then you can always use auto settings. But if it's not working for you, then you can switch back to manual settings and see what settings are exactly that's not working for you and how you should change them. If you're on a mobile phone, then you might have some limitations. Especially even if you use a third-party camera apps, you cannot change aperture. You can only change shutter speed and ISO. But still, it's a good start. Now number 2. Only using manual settings. Now I know you are thinking, what is he saying? First he says that using too much auto settings, now he's saying using only manual settings. What I mean is that your camera have more modes than just auto and manual settings. There are modes like aperture mode, shutter speed mode and a lot of other modes. So you should go out and also check out those other modes. Now manual settings is good to understand how aperture, shutter speed and ISO works, but once you have understood the basics of it, start exploring other modes in your camera. Camera is nothing but just a tool that helps you take photos that you want to. A lot of time you are in a situation where the certain environment will not wait for you. People will move, things will happen, and you cannot sit too long to set your manual settings. Maybe you can choose other modes. For example, you are on a road and you suddenly see a nice view and you want to capture some light trails. Instead of going to manual settings, you can actually go to shutter mode, so you only focus on the speed. That's it. You don't have to think about aperture or other settings. Now this can be really helpful, especially when you are in a hurry. Similarly, sometimes all you care about is that depth of field. The environment is not moving much, so you are not caring much of shutter speed. So just move to aperture mode and set the aperture that you want without worrying about other settings. In short, you just have to figure out other modes, manual mode, aperture mode, shutter mode and all these other modes, understand how they work and how those different settings work so that you can easily take photos without focusing too much on your camera. Now third mistake, not looking at your ISO. Even when you're using auto mode, sometimes the ISO will go really high. In fact, even when you're doing manual photos, you might be choosing really high ISO to make the photos look bright, but that high ISO will be adding lot of noise. I personally prefer to keep my photos little dark and post-process them later than take photos which are very bright but full of noise. Especially during the night time, you might want a higher ISO, but that ISO will add a lot of noise. For example, let's say you are in a dark environment and nothing is moving around you. Then it's better to put your camera on tripod and use higher shutter speed and use lower ISO instead of increasing the ISO and keeping shutter speed fast. Higher ISO will just simply add a lot of noise. So never ever use high ISO. Now, what is the safe limit for ISO depends on your camera. For my camera, even if I use something around 640 ISO, I can get around with it. One more thing that you can do is that, for example, in my camera, I've said that my ISO can be auto, but I've set the minimum and maximum value for this ISO. So I don't have to worry too much about my ISO even when I'm using auto or manual. I just have set the minimum and maximum value that the ISO can go. Now, if there is a situation where I do need more than that, then I will do it manually. So this is the one tip that I always use to make sure that my ISO is not too much high. I usually keep my ISO minimum as 100 and maximum 1600. Now 1600 already adds a lot of noise, but I'm also keeping an eye on my ISO when taking photo. So if I feel that my ISO is reaching 1600, I will see that if there's any other settings that I can change in my camera, like aperture, shutter speed, to reduce that ISO. That's how I will get images with less noise, images which are more sharper. Now, fourth mistake, that is not post-processing your photos. Okay, I know a lot of people say that they like to take photos as it is, as they are, but you have to understand that we are photographers, we are artists. An artist doesn't have limits. It doesn't necessarily what is there is art. What you think and what you can make out of it is the art, which means that you should put some time in post-processing also and try to enhance the photos in the way you want it to be visible to other people. And it's not only about changing the photo. You have to understand that sometimes the camera is not capturing as it is as you want. It might be dark, it might be less saturated. So you have to do post-processing after it to enhance it. For example, a lot of time I feel that if I keep my photos too bright, I might be losing some details and also adding some noise because of higher ISO. So if I'm shooting something which is a bit darker, I might be capturing more details and then I can post-process it to make it more bright. So do understand that post-processing is really important. Yes, it is very important that you take as much good exposure as possible in the camera itself. But as I said, there will always be something that is missing or is not there that you want to improve later on. Not only to make it look better, but sometimes you want that artistic touch to your photos. That's why post-processing is important. And if you're doing post-processing, my advice will be that always shoot in RAW, because RAW photos will contain as much detail as possible and you can use that detail to do better post-processing. Now there are some apps like Lightroom, Luminar, Capture One which allow to do post-processing easily, but they can be expensive. So you can try out some other apps on mobile phone which are free, like Snapseed. Snapseed allows RAW photos also. And then you can also try some free apps like Raw Therapy and Darktable to edit your photos. They are totally free. So try out these apps, do some post-processing, and do let me know that if you would also like to have some tutorials about editing. Just let me know in the comments and I will create videos for you. Now the fifth most important mistake that I did as a beginner, that is not understanding light. Photography is nothing without light. You need to understand how to use light. It doesn't mean that you have to buy expensive soft boxes and different kinds of light. What it simply means is understand how light works, how the direction of light can affect your photo, how the intensity of light can affect your photo, how going out in sun at 12 p.m. affects your photo compared to the sun at 7 a.m. in morning. For example, usually in morning and evening, it's called golden hour when the sun is out, but it's not too strong, it's not too intensive. So you get nice lighting, but not too harsh shadows. But if you go out during daytime, the sun is just above you and the shadows it creates is very harsh and the photo doesn't look that flattering. So how can you deal with it? Maybe going under the shade might help you, right? And if you're inside a room where there's not much light, using an external source of light might be helpful. Maybe you sitting near the window might be helpful. So you have to understand how a light works. You don't have to buy fancy light gears. You just have to understand how light works. There are so many things around that create light. Even there's a flash on your phone that creates a light. You can use it creatively to add light to your photos. So understand how light works and it will just change your game. It will change your photography. You will become a really good photographer if you understand light. So these are the 5 mistakes that I did myself and I don't want you to repeat it. And I hope you will learn something from my experience and improve as a beginner photographer in 2020. I hope you liked this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please press a like button and comment how you feel about this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. And also turn on the notifications. We keep running contests on our website, so do check out our website, which is 35mm.app, and also follow our Instagram to keep an update about what videos we are creating, what contests we are running, and who are the winners of this contest. See you next time and have a happy new year.